All right, so now we're going to move into what we call the multiples, okay? So multiples, the word kind of sounds like multiply, right? And that's basically what it is. The multiple list is a never-ending list. So looking at, for example, number 23, I'm asking list the first 5 multiples of each. So I want to know what's the multiples of 7. What I'm asking in reality is what's 7 times 1, 7 times 2, 7 times 3, times 4, times 5. Okay, so multiples is basically the multiplication because it's a never-ending list. I could go as far as I need to go, but that's why I'm going to limit to only the first 5. So 7 times 1 is 7, right? So I'm just going to write 7. Let me put a comma. 7 times 2 is 14. So I'm going to just write 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. And 7 times 5 is 35. So I'm going 7 and I'm multiplying it, right? Up until 5. When you guys type in your answer, one thing, in between the numbers, don't forget the comma. You guys see I have a comma in between my numbers. And don't forget a space after each comma. So let me emphasize, there is a space after each comma. Okay, that's pretty much it that I have to do for this one. For question number 24, I'm going to do the multiples of 32. All right, I'm going to find out what's 32 times 1. Well, 32 times 1 is 32. 32 times 2, well, that's 64. 32 times 3, that's going to be 96. 32 times 4, it's 128. And then 32 times 5 will be 160. Again, don't forget the commas in between the numbers. Don't forget the space after each comma. Now, quick trick that we can do. Looking at question, coming back to number 23, we could have started at 7. Right, the first number we could have started at 7. And to be honest, for each numbered, I'm just going to add 7 more. We learned back in elementary that multiplication was repeated addition, right? In this case, we add 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. So that's one way we can do it. So the multiples of 32 start with 32. And for each following number, we're going to add 32 as well. 32 plus 32 plus 32. So you don't have to type in on your calculator 32 times 1, 32 times 2, 32 times 3, 32 times 4. Right? You could just do 32, and then for each number, add 32 plus 32 plus 32. So a little bit less on our calculators. Now we're going to find the least common multiple of each. One thing I'm going to do, so I have 2 numbers here. Let me find some multiples of 30. So let's see. Let me find the first 5. Probably 5 is enough. So let me find the first 5 of 30. I'm going to go 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. My list could go on, but I'm going to do 5. Probably 5 is enough. Again, I could have gone 30 times 1, 30 times 2, times 3, times 4. Or I just started with 30. And for each additional number, I added 30 more. Again, do multiplication or addition, whichever one you want to do. Now let me find some multiples of 20. Let me find the first 5. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. And just for kicks, let me do one more. 120. Because I could do my list as big as I need. Now, we heard last week we talked about common factor, right? We were looking at the greatest common factor. That's what we talked about last week. Remember, we talked about factors last week. Common meant it was a factor of all. So now we're dealing with common multiple, right? We're looking at the least, but my phrase here, let me focus on common multiple. So what I'm looking for is a common multiple. So it has to be a multiple of 30, has to be a multiple of 60. But now I'm going to look for the least. So, okay, so I mean that there could be some common multiples, right? I see 120, that's a common multiple. But my question here is the least. So is there a common multiple that is less than 120? And yep, I see 60, right? 60 is a common multiple. And I even ask myself, is there a common multiple smaller than 60? That's why we use the word least. Least common multiple. In this case, that's the smallest common multiple we find. So my answer, if this was a question, my answer would be 60. In red, you guys see my work. In blue, you guys see my answer, right? So I find multiples of 30. I find multiples of 20, and I'm just looking for the smallest, least common multiple. All right, let's take a look at number 26. Now I have three numbers. All right, let me find some multiples of 16. I'm just going to start 16, and then 32. I either go 16 times 1, 16 times 2, or I start with 16, and each time I add 16 more. So I'm just going to go 48, 64, 80. Let's go a little bit more. In this case, 96, 112, 128, and let's see, 144. Well, hopefully that's enough. I might make my list. I might need to make them bigger. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at some multiples of 40. So I'm going to start 40, and then 80, 120, 160, 200, 240, 280, and think that's enough for 40s. Now let's start with 32, right? I'm going to find some multiples of 32. So I'm going to start with 32, and then 64, 96, 128, 160, 192, 224, and let me start at 256. Right, I started with 32, and each time I was adding 32 more. Or do you guys want to do 32 times 1, 32 times 2, 32 times 3, times 4, times 5? Up to you. Now I'm looking for it. Is there a number that is in all three lists? To take a look at it easier, I see that 40s, they all finish in a 0. Okay, so let me take a look at all the numbers that I have on the other two numbers that finish with a 0. Is there a common number? No, I don't have one. Okay, so I might need to make one of my lists bigger. Let me come back to my first list. The multiples of 16. I stop at 144, right? So I have 144. Let me add 16 more. Let me make this list bigger. Let me add 16 more. So that gives me 160. I think I just found our answer right here. 160 is a multiple in all three. I don't see a smaller common multiple. So I'm going to say my least common multiple in this case will be 160. Again, common multiple means it's a multiple in all of them. If we only have two numbers, it has to be a multiple of two numbers. If we have three numbers, it has to be a multiple of all three numbers. I'm just looking for that least common multiple. Let me zoom out what we did today so you guys can see it. It's right there.